Hi, everyone. We're on chapter 16 of The River. If you remember in chapter 15, Brian built the raft. He's getting ready to take he and the still unconscious Derek downriver to a trading post that he's found on the map, figuring about a 10-day journey when he did the math. Just getting ready to launch the raft here at the beginning of chapter 16. It proved to be almost impossible to start. Brian took the briefcase down to the raft and decided to take a weapon. He left the bow, but took two lances he had made, one fish spear with twin tines, held open with a small stick that he'd made to show Derek you could use a spear as well as a bow to take a small fish. The other was a straight spear with a fire-hardened point that he decided to use, if necessary, on a moose. Did it really attack you? Derek had asked when he told him of his time near the L-shaped lake and the moose attack. Really come out? And stayed with it, Brian said. I couldn't do anything. It just kept coming back, pushing me down underwater until I pretended to be dead. Next time, I'm going to fight back. So he made the spear and hoped he would never have to use it. When the spears and the briefcase were on the raft, he went back to the camp. Derek, the true reason for the raft. He had to get Derek down to the raft and on it without hurting him, or worse, drowning him. He took Derek onto his back, grabbed him under the shoulders, and tried to pull him down to the bank. Derek didn't move. Brian pulled and the man just lay still, and Brian looked to see if his shoe got caught on a root by the fire or in the brush, but it had not. It just couldn't be that hard to move. He almost thought body, but person, just a person on his back. He ought to simply skid down the bank. In the end, Brian did get him to skid about 3 inches at a time. He heaved and jerked and pulled until finally Derek was on the bank, lying on his side facing the water. There was a small ledge and a drop-off of approximately 6 inches to the water. This close to the shore, the lake was very shallow, not enough water to float the raft, and Brian had to horse the raft sideways to get it in so that it was lying sideways next to Derek and just below him, grounded in the mud on the bottom. He kneeled in the water next to the raft. He had been soaked since starting to build the raft and figured to remain wet until they made it. He did not wish to think of the alternatives. He used his hip to jam the raft into the bank and reached across to pull Derek onto the raft. Again, it was like moving lead weight. Derek seemed bolted to the earth, and Brian had to settle for pulling one end, then the other, back and forth from Derek's arms to his ankles until the man was at last on the raft, which settled into the mud on the bottom under Derek's weight and remained solid. Brian positioned him first on his back and then decided he might choke and moved him over onto his side in the center of the raft. The middle cross piece on the raft caught Derek in the soft part just above the hip and helped to hold him in place. But Brian did not think it would be enough. He tore more strips from his jacket and made a tie down. This he used to go from one side of the raft over Derek's shoulders to the other side to tie him in position. Finally, with Derek lashed in, Brian used Derek's own jacket rolled up to make a pillow, where he worked under Derek's head. He checked the breathing and heartbeat again, and he was surprised to see that he did it almost automatically. It had just been hours, just over a day and a half, and he was already reacting automatically. Derek, I don't know if you can hear me. He settled in the water next to the grounded raft and spoke to Derek's face. I'm going to tell you anyway. We're going to take this raft down the river that leads from the lake. It's just under 100 miles to a trading post. The thing is, we can't stay here because, well, it just wouldn't work. And the radio was blown up by the same lightning that hit you. So we can't call for help. So we have to do this. We have to do this. He shook his head, choked up, realized when he was close to crying. Oh, hell, we just have to do this. I hope it works out. He started to work the raft out of the mud and float it free when he thought of something. What if they came unexpectedly? If they just found Derek and Brian gone, they wouldn't know what to think. He had to leave a note. He opened the briefcase and took out a pencil and a notebook. He wrote in large block letters, "Big storm, Derek hit by lightning, in a coma, trying to raft downriver to Brannock's trading post, 100 miles south, come quick, Brian Robeson." He studied the note, then added the date and time. He had left the radio behind back up in the campsite, thinking it would be in the way. He ran back to the shelter and found the radio in its plastic case and folded the note and put it in the case so that it stuck out slightly. Then he tied the radio back up under the overhang with its carrying strap so that anybody coming to the shelter would be certain to see it. Back of the raft, he found Derek's weight had pushed it to the bottom so hard it was difficult to get loose. He sawed it back and forth, one end out, then the other, and finally it broke free, though floating still in little more than a foot of water. Good place to test it, he said. Seemed very stable, with just Derek on it, and Brian carefully eased his knees onto the end by Derek's feet. The end sank lower a few inches, but was still well above the surface. He raised on his knees and rocked back and forth, ready to jump off if it started over. The raft bobbed back to level and settled from the roll fast, the flat bottom slapping the water tightly. It's seaworthy. He climbed back off the raft and checked Derek again. He was resting in the same position. Some water had come up between the logs and made his shoulders wet, but his head was on the jacket pillow and was still dry. Brian looked at the sun. It was mid-afternoon. Dark was still 5 or 6 hours away, not that it mattered. Once they started, they would have to keep moving, even through the night if they could. Time was everything. The river left the lake at the south end, a good half-mile away. Rather than try to move the raft across the lake, he decided to pull it around the edge in the shallows, and he started moving along the shore. The raft followed easily, and Brian let himself feel just the slightest bit positive for the first time since the lightning had hit them. The raft seemed to work well. The weather was holding. They had a map, and most of all, Derek was still alive. They had a shot at it. All right, there's chapter 16.